embracing the changes and what the technology is bringing to you, we will have to do that in our business life, but also in our personal life.
Welcome to the Veterinary Blueprint Podcast, brought to you by Butler Vet Insurance, hosted by Bill Butler. The Veterinary Blueprint Podcast is for veterinarians and practice managers who are looking to learn about working on their practice instead of in their practice. Each episode, we will bring you successful, proven blueprints from others both inside and outside the veterinary industry. Welcome to today's episode.
Welcome to the Veterinary Blueprints Podcast, where veterinary medicine meets business and entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Bill Butler, and today's guest is Jacinthe Moreau. She's the CEO and co-founder of VetSkribe, a company helping veterinarians simplify documentation. With over 25 years in the veterinary industry, Jacinthe has held leadership roles at VCA, VetSource, World Pet Association, and more. Her expertise in marketing and business strategy has helped countless veterinary professionals improve their practices. We're going to talk about her journey today and the challenges veterinarians face in the current marketplace and how VetSkribe is making a difference. Jacinthe, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be able to talk to your audience today.
Perfect. Well, we had met at VMX and had dinner as a vet partner member down at VMX, and then got connected, and you've got a very interesting story and journey and current company and what you're involved in, and we're both vet partner members, so we've gotten to know each other a little bit. So why don't you tell our audience a little bit about your journey from where you were in the animal health industry to founding VetSkribe?
Okay. I can do that. Do we have like a few hours? It's a long
I think we all need that amount of time. Well, why don't we make it a couple minutes instead of a couple hours?
Sure. First of all, I was in the veterinary field for all of my life. That's where my heart is. That's where my passion is. I started when I was very young in Canada and then moved to the US working for pharma companies. When I was in Delaware at the time, I started my own company. So it was the first time that I was an entrepreneur raising money for animal cancer. And from there, we moved to the West Coast, where I'm talking to you today from California. And when I say we, it's my husband and I, we kind of always have a big work together. We have a big magnet between us. So when one goes somewhere, the other one has a tendency to follow. And that's what happened in our life. So we moved to the West Coast and started to work for a very big group of veterinary practices, VCA. So that was when we really had the opportunity to work with many veterinarians and understanding the struggle and how sometimes crazy it is to work in a veterinary practice, how rewarding it can be, but how frustrating it can be. And the processes also, and if you want to implement something, that the change management is most of the time the biggest challenge you have. So when I was working at VCA, I was responsible for new technology or new services. So that's where I thrive. I really like everything that is new. So I had the pleasure of working there on home delivery even before home delivery was a thing, so 2008. And I also developed some wellness program for them, a private brand of product, created a team of marketers. And then from there, I went to the World Pet Association. So I did jump to the pet side for 3 years and then came back on the veterinary side. And when I came back, I had the opportunity of working for VMG, Veterinary Management Group. And the idea for VetSkribe came out of a meeting that I was attending, a VMG meeting that I was attending with about maybe 16, 20 veterinarians at dinner, almost like during our vet partners dinner. Everybody's together, and then you talk about your child, your children, or something like that. But then the conversation took a turn, and the veterinarians, owners, were talking about the pain of doing the notes, the soap notes, the
transcription,
the transcription. And that started the most animated conversation I had ever witnessed with veterinarians. They were all complaining, saying that their veterinarians were spending enormous hours of time doing transcription, or some were late, not only days, but weeks. And it was like, wow, they were just like very emotionally involved. And you could tell that the soap notes were really a problem. And that is before AI. And at that time, there were a few services that you could use to speak in a mic and be attached to your computer to do your notes. But the doctors that were around that table were commenting to the effect that some had tried them and it was not meeting their expectations because the doctors still needed to be at the practice and doing their things in front of the computer. And then there were a little bit of other technology challenges. So I just thought about why don't we do an app? And I called one of the doctor, Dr. John Allett, the next day and talk about the app. And he said, "Oh my God, that's so simple. Do it." So I went.
So that's how VetSkribe was
Yeah.
born. It was born from a dinner conversation about problems veterinarians were having around documentation and transcription of their medical notes. And so you launched an app.
That's it. You listen to the client, the people doing the work, and then sometimes it triggers those ideas. And then AI become a thing as we were launching, and we had to pivot and really retrain our platform to work with AI. So we were very mindful and careful before we launched because we wanted to make sure that our technology could be as good as it could be at the time.
Sure.
Because with AI, and I think anybody could rely to that, the advancement that you see from 1 month to the next are tremendous. So
Yes.
we wanted to make sure that we would be offering a good quality product at the time. And when I'm looking back right now, like almost like a year and a half ago, and what we were doing, I'm almost ashamed because we're so much better. And I'm sure I will have the same feeling in 2 years from now.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, when we talk about, we were just down at WVC, we're recording this early spring of 2025. And so, this is a snapshot in time, as you talked about 18 months ago, your product and I think AI services overall, regardless of what they are, has changed tremendously in 2 years. And it's going to be further advanced 2 years from now as we're recording the spring of 2025. For the listeners out there, we were just down at WVC. You're out on the exhibit hall floor and you're there represented at VMX, or you see other scribing. What is AI scribing and what can it do and not do?
That's a very good question. AI scribing is a way for veterinarians to gain back their time. After each consultation, veterinarians are documenting the entire conversation they had with a pet owner. And now with the simple press of a button, you can have this conversation being recorded and the AI going over the details of the conversation and building the soap notes. So as soon as the doctor is done with their consultation and they press submit, within less than a minute, the draft of their notes or their notes are back into their device. If they are working on a phone, on a tablet, on a computer, everything is back to them, and then they can right there on the spot approve, or if they have edits to do, they can do their edits, and they can be done with that case. So AI is definitely a help for any type of documentation that veterinarians have to do. So it could be soap notes, it could be surgery report, it could be callback. Think about anything that usually a veterinarians would be spending typing on a keyboard instead of having their hands on an animal. Pretty much everything that they are typing, we can do for them. And AI will improve the consistency of the record because the AI works a little bit more like an automated machine, if you want. So it will build notes that will be consistent and accurate. So, and it will also help veterinarians be in the moment with their pet owner, because they don't have to either take bullet notes on a piece of paper, or they don't have to multitask with their brain and saying, okay, I need to remember that to document my note. I need to take account of that. Now they can really be in that conversation and be very engaged with the pet owner, looking at the patient and not having to worry too much about what they will need to put in their notes.
That was going to be my follow-up question. So, the AI out there and, VetSkribe, how does that, and you kind of describe that, the being in the moment, being able to focus more on patients and clients instead of the computer, or even just trying to remember to take, I do this with clients. We have a client meeting with a veterinary practice and they're talking about their practice operations and why they started the practice and all this stuff. And then we get done with our meeting and I've got to, because we document our client notes and calls just like a vet practice does, not in a medical term, but, and so, trying to have that documentation and not worrying about typing on my computer while we're having a meeting. How has that changed for your clients with VetSkribe? How are they transitioning to be more in the moment working with their clients and patients?
No, that's a good question. I think, and I have not surveyed our client, but I feel that our veterinarians using the service were not necessarily typing their notes, like looking away from the clients and typing while the client is in the room. Most of them were taking little notes, but then they always had the fear of missing out on some details.
Yeah.
Which, knowing that you have this great partner now that is the AI, that is almost like this presence in the room that will be capturing all of that information, you can just forget about those bullet points or those mental notes and the fear of missing something. We have clients that were telling us that when they came to us, they were telling us, sometimes I'm late doing my notes and I will do my notes 2-3 days later. And they were explaining that sometimes they have to stand up and put themselves around a table on the side that they were when they were doing the exam on that animal to remember if it was the right leg or the left leg.
Oh my.
I mean, but you see 15, 20, 22 patients a day. And then if you have to remember all of that, that's a lot. So sometimes...
Was that the black cat or the tabby that I had the conversation about the hairball issue and the vomit all the time? I could, we don't have that much, we don't have that many appointments or meetings, but it's the same situation. You have a client meeting and then you get a phone call and then there's an email and then you're recording a podcast with a great guest like you. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I have to go home for the day because I've got another appointment. I'm supposed to have dinner with my wife. And then I'll document that conversation tomorrow and trying to remember all the small details and the fine points. And, I'm not dealing in a clinical setting. I'm just talking about like how many square foot is your building? Did they say 3,500 or 4,500? I can't read my note that I scribbled during the meeting. So your service is actually recording during the client interaction, during the patient meeting. You're live recording that interaction with the client or the patient?
Yeah, you can do that, or you can dictate after a consultation.
Okay.
So let's say that you have a sensitive consultation or someone doesn't want to be recorded, which never happened so far or that we know of. But you can dictate after the consultation. Or another example is that we have quite a bit of equine veterinarians and they dictate while they are driving in between barns.
Sure,
But
absolutely.
in companion animal practices, 95% of our clients are using the ambient mode. And Bill, I just want to come back. Your first question was about what can AI do and cannot do. And I just want to talk about what it cannot do because we don't want to promise the moon. Something that
Absolutely.
AI cannot do is replace the veterinarian expertise. The veterinarian is the expert. The veterinarian should stay in charge of the recommendation. We don't do generative AI. We don't propose treatment. We're not there yet. When the technology will get there eventually, we might. But right now, those decisions, the plan and everything in our book belongs to the veterinarians.
So it's more of a transcription AI than a generative. Tell me my schedule for the day based on what I want to try and do, and then AI generates my schedule for the day. This is dictate my schedule for the day, and then it puts it on a piece of paper, so to speak, to oversimplify
kind
it.
of. Another point also that AI is not really truly good as we speak today in spring of 2025 is the nuances in a conversation. Sometimes there will be things that might have like two different meanings. Or another example, if you have a multi-pet appointment and the veterinarian is working with two cats at the same time, that's
Sure.
complicated for the AI. The veterinarians, they really have to be careful in saying, here I'm working on Mimi, and here I'm working on Chocolat, and Mimi has this, and Chocolat has that. So that is very tricky. Or the nuances of something that was expressed. Sometimes the AI will hear in the conversation and be literate, and you need to be careful with that.
Sure.
So the AI does not replace entirely the human. It's really a big help, but think about it as a partner into building your notes that does not replace you. And the veterinarians still have the responsibility of reading what the AI is suggesting, making potential edits if they need to, and then approve what has been done by the AI.
And I think that's true for all AI these days right now. You know, the in the insurance industry, and there's a lot of AI being used for, you know, marketing or scheduling or just all the things that AI is doing right now. And everywhere you hear AI being referenced, it's talked about, well, you need to check its work. It's not the end all be all, and it gets you about 80% of the way there. There's some changes that need to be made, or the voice of AI if you're using it for marketing or those types of things. So how have you seen this help with your clients, or just, you know, clients that are embracing veterinary practice, embracing AI? How have you seen them? How have you seen it affect their efficiency and workflow, and then more importantly, their well-being?
I mean, all of that. Their well-being, you know, the stress, I was mentioning the stress of being late 2 days in your notes. Some people, when they are coming to us, are way farther behind than that. They wake up in the middle of the night. They cannot really sleep because they know that they are so late in their notes. It's a requirement when you are a veterinarian to maintain your medical records adequately. So it's a stress that is always on their shoulder. They do what we call pajama charting. Sometimes they go home, they feed the kids, they put they do the bath, the routine, they put the kids in bed, and then they reopen the computer and work for hours. So guess what? You show up at work the next day, you're exhausted, you did not even have that break, that mental break that you needed. Now AI can take all of that. Veterinarians, usually self-reported surveys that we have done, our users are saving in average between 6 and 8 minutes per consultations. So per consultation. So if
you're doing, I'm grabbing my calculator right now. So if you're seeing 15 patients a day, we'll just call it 7 minutes because it's 6 to 8. So 7 times 15 is 105 divided by 60. So that's 1.7 hours a day saved times, let's just say 20 days in a month. That's 35 hours a month.
That's almost a full working week a month. When you think about that, it's mind-boggling. And very few technology or improvement over the last few years could provide that amount of time save or productivity or good quality time that you can use to do whatever you want. We have veterinarians that are telling us that with the time save, they can now take a break, a lunch break. I mean, I have a lunch break every day, but many veterinarians don't even have the luxury of
it's a working lunch.
I mean, grabbing their sandwich while treating a patient. Now they can really take a break. Now we are in the springtime. They can go out for a walk and enjoy the beautiful weather that we're starting to have. Or they can use those hours to do CE. I mean, CE hours that they need to do, they can do that. They can...
Or just be home with the family.
Totally. Be home with the family is a big one. Mentoring other staff members in the practice. Or some veterinarians will also say, I'm going to do an F&F. I will either see more patients a day. So some veterinarians want to see more patients. You can do that with that hour and something that you calculated. Or you can extend the time of the consultation. So let's say that right now you only have 20 minutes consultation. we know that there's a lot happening and you have to talk fast. But if you can extend that consultation by the 7 minutes that you're saving, that's giving you the time to invest into that relationship with the pet owner, making sure that the pet owner understands the recommendation, that you can engage them in better care for your patients. And most of the time there is a financial return. Not that we're looking for that as veterinarians, we're not looking for a financial return, but if you spend more time explaining a treatment, the compliance will be increased, the outcome will be better, and usually it's reflected financially. So there are so many ways that you can use the time that you're gaining back. It's really up to the veterinarians, but time is very precious.
Well, time is also
Yes.
money. And so from a time and financial impact, I've always looked at whenever I add a piece of technology to my business or practice, it's about integrating that in fully. Otherwise, I'm not getting the full financial benefit of that. So, you're getting a time benefit by using this. What's the financial impact of adding this or financial consideration? There's a lot of services out there that are starting to think about this with PIMS and all this other stuff, but what's the financial consideration of adding this to my practice?
Yeah. And some veterinarians are coming to us thinking, okay, that's an expense and I have to be mindful of my expense. But we have others that are saying, oh my God, the money that I'm investing in that, I will recoup it by my return on investment will be so much better, either financially or on well-being of my team or recruiting.
Well, what's your time worth, right? I mean, I look at it this way. If you're the veterinary practice owner and you look at, your team members' time, especially associate veterinarians, you quantify their revenue they generate by how many appointments they see and well-being. Well, if they're burned out and they're sick and they're not coming to work, or you've got churn at the practice, all of those things, those are financial considerations. So if you're saving your team 7 minutes an appointment and they're just happier mentally, you're going to run a better practice overall. So I've always looked at not an expense and investment, whether it's, flying down to go to a vet partners meeting, that's an investment. It's not a business expense to fly down because, I'm getting to network with great people like you and Serge. And so it's the financial investment versus financial expense, and what are you getting out of it?
Yeah, I really like that you consider that as an investment, because it is truly, from any angle you look at it, it's not really an expense, it's definitely an investment.
Yeah. So how accurate, talking about AI, we chat a little bit, you do need to check its work. What are some of the limitations in capturing specific terminology for the veterinary industry using AI or using AI like VetSkribe?
I want to say it's pretty good. Just talking about what we were talking before, 18 months ago, there were mistakes. There are still mistakes today, so that's something that veterinarians have to keep in mind. But it's so much better, and I want to see the accuracy is very high. Even
Very high.
with brand names, commercial brand names, it will catch the brand names. Even when the doctor is recommending drugs or medication that are from the human side, usually it will do a good job. So it's fairly accurate. That being said, the accuracy depends on how the veterinarian is conducting the consultation. If a veterinarian is very quiet when they do a consultation, like when they do their exam, if they don't verbalize everything that they are doing, obviously what the AI doesn't hear, the AI does not write. So some veterinarians do have to change the way that they are doing their consultation. And when they do that, when they verbalize everything that they are doing and they are very precise, saying, okay, now I'm going to look at the skin, which in our notes will be integument, the AI will listen to that. But not only the AI, the pet owner that is in the room realizes everything that the doctor is doing during their exam. The doctor is not
Sure.
just petting my pet. He's really looking and feeling the musculoskeletal and everything. So if a doctor is very precise in saying, okay, I'm doing an exam of the ears and this is what I note, the AI will do a good job. The quality of the recording as well. Sometimes we do have veterinarians or technicians it seems to be more the technicians that will have their phone in their back pocket, and then they have a big sweater over their phone, and then they have the white coat or something, and they move a lot. And if the sound is not clear, we do a pretty good job at really filtering through the noise. But it's something that you have to keep in mind. If really your recording device is buried somewhere, that might impact the accuracy. But overall, the accuracy is excellent.
So, there's a lot of different PIMS out there. How does AI or VetSkribe specifically, but just AI, how has the integration process been with services like VetSkribe to different PIMS software systems?
I'm glad you asked this question, because when we meet with veterinarians, that's the first question they ask.
Sure. Is this going to work with my stuff?
Exactly. And I totally understand, because veterinarians don't want to have to go to 12 different platforms to really be able to work within their PIMS where they spend all of their time. Right now, most service, if not all services, do not integrate with PIMS. The way that we work at VetSkribe is that we have a team of medical scribes that, if you want, and if it's a service that is offered, you don't have to take it, but we have a team of medical scribe that log on to your PIMS through either remote access or on the cloud. The veterinarians will give us a login credential, and we do the uploads in the patient files into the practice management software, also called PIMS, on behalf of the doctors. If you don't want to do that, the copy and paste is very simple. You come, you look at the notes, you approve your notes, and then you copy them, and then you transfer them into your PIMS. So it's a simple process that can be done. So either you do it yourself, or you ask our medical scribes to do it for you.
Sure. So, as we start to wrap up, as we mentioned, like if you go to WVC or you go to VMX, you see a lot of these services starting to pop up, either the PIMS themselves trying to offer some scribing services. For a veterinary practice out there looking to engage with VetSkribe or another practice out there, a scribing service, especially using AI, what considerations should they think about when they want to start using this at their practice?
I think they have to look at their current process and see how they will integrate a scribing service. Some veterinarians want to be the only one to use it within the practice. We recommend that you team up with your staff, with your technician, and even your receptionist. Technician can use the app, start the recording, go on with the collection of the information, the history or the subjective information, and then submit. So then the veterinarians can review in the app everything that was collected by the technicians, even before they get into the consultation room to meet the patient.
Wow, okay.
So you know what you're stepping in. And then it's giving you an occasion to say, oh, I need to dig a little bit more into that point. But you don't have to ask the same question over and over again to the pet owner. So it shows respect to the pet owner, and it's giving you a little bit more time. So you have to think of the way that you will be using it. We highly recommend a team approach. Same thing if in your app we don't pull some PIMS, we don't pull the appointments to show them in the app. Veterinarians should have their receptionists in the morning to create their appointments for them. So when they are ready, they just pull their app and they see the patient, they open the patient, and they're ready to go.
And they're ready to go.
That's another way to work with your team.
And you had mentioned, and I'm sure it's, as you said, it's understanding, and this kind of goes to my investment of technology component is, what do you want it to do for you? Do you want it to be, as you mentioned, you have an ambient recording where it's recording during the appointment versus recording notes post-appointment. And so it's probably understanding how you want the scribing service to work in your practice as you're building out your process. Do we want to record during the appointment, post-appointment? Do we want all the team to use it? How are we going to integrate with our PIMS? And so it's figuring out, how do we work at our practice? How do we want to use this technology that we're going to invest in and make the best use of it? Maybe we need to change some of our practices for the better.
Exactly. And a piece of advice that I would give the veterinarians is that to understand that now your note will be built by this collaborator, the AI. So when you will receive the notes back, they will not be written with your tone of voice. So it's almost to say to the veterinarians, look at the information. If what is medically relevant is there, even if it's not written with your own choice of words, if the information is there, don't start retyping everything, because if you do, you could end up spending more time than if you would have done your notes yourself. So just look if it's there, even if it's not written with your own style, it's there. And talking about that, Bill, I want to mention that we offer personalized templates. So if veterinarians, and most veterinarians, work with their own templates, with their default content describing a condition, you can keep your templates. And when you work with our service, you just send them to us. We build them for you. A few hours back, you will find them in your template. The AI will work within your template and will listen to the conversation. And if it hears an abnormal, let's say you say something about a heart condition, the AI will come and overwrite the default content that was there, saying potentially that the heart was in great condition, and it will override this information with the new information that was verbalized by the veterinarian about an abnormal. So that's really a great benefit. So don't retype or reword everything. Work with it.
Don't try and reinvent the wheel if the content's there that you need in the medical record. What I've always coached our team about when we're talking about documentation is going back and looking at your work, review your work. And because if I'm typing it in, we use a little bit of documentation and transcription, but for the most part, we're still typing our notes here at Butler Vet Insurance. And so what I've coached our team about, we've preached for years, is go back and look at what you typed to make sure what you've typed is clear to somebody who's reading this for the first time, versus just like, well, I know what I wrote there and it makes sense to me, but it needs to make sense to somebody 2 years from now who's going to look at this note in the future, and probably not you. Maybe it's a different veterinarian, maybe it's a different tech. And so making sure to check your work, but not trying to reinvent the wheel.
We think that it's very important, the point you're making, Bill, because it's kind of ensuring the good continuity of care. If it's not you that see that patient in a year from now, will your note make sense? Or we do see, especially young graduates, young veterinarians, that sometimes have a tendency to really write long. They want to build defensible records, and they tend to put a lot of information. And sometimes for the next veterinarian that will come, let's say next year, you almost have to read the novel and look for the medical information in that novel.
Sure.
The AI will kind of like sort all of that information, make it concise, making it clear, making it more standardized if you want. So the veterinarian that will come in a year will look at the notes, and everything will be there, clearly stated. And there will not be this kind of like, I don't want to say not useful information, but the medical relevant information will be there.
The cliff notes,
Yes.
so to speak, for those of us old enough to remember cliff notes. So as we start to wrap up our conversation, in the current modern veterinary practice here, spring of 2025, what is the risk what's the risk from trying AI or saying, all right, we're going to give this a 6-month trial at our practice to see if it really is everything it's cracked up to be? What's the risk of not doing, or what's the risk of saying, hey, I'm going to give this a shot in the current modern veterinary practice?
Wow, that's a good question. What could be the risk? It's a pretty easy process or system to implement. You almost have nothing to do. If you know how to use Siri on your phone, it's the same.
You're pretty much there. It's just, how does it integrate with your system or process at the practice?
Yeah, and the risk, every day the veterinarian is supposed and should review their recordings or their notes. Ideally, after each consultation or during a break, either lunch break or at the end of the day. So if there would be something, let's say something terrible would happen with the AI and AI would start to hallucinate, the veterinarian should catch that the same day. So the risk would be, hey, we have a problem with the AI. Can you look into that? Honestly, Bill, I barely see a risk, and the prices are so affordable that even financially, it's not a risk. The one risk that I'm trying hard to find something that would be considered as a risk.
So it's very low risk. It's, hey, let's give this a shot. I mean, I've I've invested in different pieces of technology at my business. You know, you sign up for a year contract and you go, okay, well, that didn't quite perform the way I thought it would. It's $3,000 or it's a $4,000 investment. But for the ones that have worked out or have been very beneficial, that return on investment has outweighed the risk of giving it a shot.
So I was trying just to find a risk, and I think I might have one just because I really want to answer your question. Let's say that you are a owner of a practice, and then you say, let's try VetSkribe for 6 months. And then after 6 months, for XYZ reason, you, the owner of the practice, says, I want to go back to my old ways and have my people to type the notes and everything. I feel you would have a rebellion that your team might argue with that. So that's the only risk.
That's the risk, is trying it out, deciding you don't like it, and your team saying, no, this was really good. We want to keep this going. It's probably the biggest risk. Okay, well, that's actually, it probably shows that if I've attended a lot of different events over the last probably 2 years in the insurance world, and there's, whether it's AI from scribing or, what have you, the smart industry people in my world say that there's going to be two kinds of insurance agencies at the end of this decade, which we're only 5 years away from. It's insurance agencies that are out of business and those that have embraced AI. And if you haven't embraced AI in some shape or form, you're not going to be competing with your competitors, whether that's coding inside our management systems or using it for marketing purposes. Or, I was using AI this morning to create a flyer internally for our insurance association. Instead of spending 2 hours formatting a flyer, I just spoke into Microsoft Word my thoughts and said, okay, create a one-page flyer on this topic. Now, I needed to go in and make some edits and adjustments, but instead of spending 2 hours on that, I spoke for 10 minutes and had it create a generally pretty decent thing for us to review. So the risk is pretty low. The risk could be where you versus your competition somewhere else.
I agree. And, embracing the changes and what the technology is bringing to you, we will have to do that in our business life, but also in our personal life. The changes that AI will have on our society will be impactful.
Good or bad, but we have to be understanding of what's happening.
Exactly.
Well, if there are listeners out there that want to find you or VetSkribe, where's the best place to find VetSkribe? The website will have some information on that in the show notes, but VetSkribe.com, or what's your website?
VetSkribe.com, VetSkribe written with a K. So VetSkribe.com. And Bill, please feel free to put my email address. If someone has a specific question, I would be pleased to follow up with them. I always love engaging with veterinarians or anybody from the veterinary community.
Every time I was cruising the floor on the vet shows, you were always happily engaged with a veterinarian out there. So I know that you're very passionate about this and helping the animal services industry in this. And so just a pleasure to have you on the podcast, and look forward to seeing you at our next dinner event out in the world somewhere in the world of animal health.
Absolutely. I think we will meet this summer in July, probably.
Let's hope so. All right. Well, take care, and thanks for listening to this episode of the Veterinary Blueprints Podcast.
Thank you so much, Bill.
As always, make sure to like, review, and subscribe to the podcast. It helps us share our message with veterinarians out there everywhere. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day.